Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we are going to be taking a look at how you can become a hyper carry jungler and carry in every situation. Whether you might be winning the game, losing the game, having inting lane, have winning lanes, this kind of playstyle, although it does synergize with a certain class of champions, will provide you with the fundamentals necessary to adapt to whatever the situation might need. Now recently a lot of the videos we've talked about, certain types of pathing practices, adapting, cutting your clears short, but that's really not great for your farming junglers. Slingshotting your LP and focusing on one side of the map might work for a Rek'Sai, but if you're a Fiddlesticks or an Evelyn, it's really inefficient, and I've had discussions with people in the comments as well as on Twitter just talking about these kinds of ideas. But if you are struggling to put these principles into action yourself or just need a more one-on-one touch to activate your improvement, Mentorship Coaching is here to help. An online platform that allows you to play with some of the best in the world and gain private one-on-one coaching. Mentorship's list of verified challenger players makes it easy to get started, featuring role selection, champion-specific coaching, and swiftly being able to book your type of coaching and time slot, all within 3 minutes. Easier than gaining LP in the Udyr meta. If you're struggling not only in League of Legends but also other games, there are high elo coaches from 100 plus titles. Mentorship is also offering a limited time discount of 15% off your first session using code Virkayu. Click the link in the description below to start improving. And now to jump straight into the gameplay, we have a Lee Sin versus a Fiddlesticks. Runes on your screen now, and it's worth noting that while Dark Harvest is a viable rune on Fiddlesticks, it's not something I really enjoy. I feel like you're losing way too much early pressure, and just because your Fiddlesticks or something like this isn't a ganking jungler doesn't mean all those pathing videos we've just been talking about have no value for them. Understanding all these principles is vital, and having Predator to be more active without your ultimate and to be active pre-6 should you need to, or at least having Electrocute to guarantee one poor soul will be eliminated, provides you a lot more versatility. Now obviously in the matchup component we have Lee Sin. He will be aggressive, he will look to cut the map, he will look to invade you, he wants to counter gank you, he's going to try get lanes ahead, he's going to try his best to prevent you from being a carry jungler. But fortunately for us, and unfortunately for him, we are all smart brains, big and voluptuous and juicy. Now you would have seen Fiddlesticks facing off against Lee Sin, just protecting his early clears. This is normal, we start with a control ward, we protect the entrances. However, in this case, we know Lee Sin isn't invading because we watch the entrances. I do think we could have benefited from some kind of early wardage just to make sure we're protected, but as you're obviously seeing from the first clear that has already begun, the Fiddlesticks started on his blue buff, whereas most Fiddlesticks, in this case, in this meta at this point in time, are starting on that top side when they're on the red side of the map. Lee Sin does what all good players should be doing against things like Fiddle, going leashless. You yourself become a question mark, and obviously you can throw a little bit of a wrinkle into their plans in terms of them not knowing where you started and where you might want to invade. As is the way, Fiddlesticks is going for a full clear. Lee Sin doesn't know where the Fiddlesticks started and therefore cuts his full clears short. The 5 camp, the best way to play this meta because it gets him into the river, onto the Scuttle Crab on time. And if the Fiddlesticks has done his full clear and he's in the area, we get to be the first, we get to take it if we have lane prio, and it provides us the ability to double crab. From here, the Lee Sin can decide, you know what, I'm gonna gank bottom lane, but if it's pushed up, he can simply fall back to his Krugs. In the meantime, obviously, the Fiddlesticks used that control ward on the top bush, the tri-bush, just to make sure it wasn't warded and he could get a free scuttle on the top side. Free scuttles are best scuttles. He then goes into the blue side jungle not knowing where Lee Sin began either and leaves an effigy. This is absolutely huge for early tracking, and if you are playing a hyper carry jungler against something that is, like a Rek'Sai, a Lee Sin, way more aggressive early, that is likely to try and come and slap you around a little bit and stop you having fun. Because you can see full well that there's no Lee Sin, all the camps are gone, we've left the effigy, we can go back to base and head to our tier 2 Grump that will be spawning soon, and obviously hit the plant to see if the bottom crab was indeed secured, which it was. What the effigy does is show us Lee Sin going for his second spawn Grump, and everything is basically all CC 11 nice and boring. However, when you are against a Fiddlesticks, the worst thing you can do is let him be. So instead of trying to match the Fiddlesticks' 4 clears, which he 100% cannot do, the Lee Sin knows if he just tries to go camp for camp, the Fiddlesticks will be sequencing up, he will gank the top side, and he will get level 6 way before Lee Sin can really do anything. So Lee Sin cuts the map, which means instead of full sequencing all the way down like an idiot, he decides to cut into the river and invade onto the second raptor spawn. He smites it away, the Fiddlesticks lets out a disgruntled wheeze of disappointment, and then now if you do have laner prio, you can of course, invade him at the Krugs and continue it going, but please use your F keys, use your map. Notice that the Aurelia on the enemy team is looking kinda spicy. In that I mean you should go diver, because that's a good play. But I have no idea how people do this and then forget that the jungler they just cut off still has a personality and still exists in this realm. They're not gonna just go back to base and cry about the fact that you smited the raptor. And Fiddlesticks is going, well, you know what I want to do early, Mr. Lee Sin? I want to counter gank, I want to use my Predator to clean up, and I want to try and at least get a little bit of impact before my ultimate. Thank you for providing me the opportunity for such an absolute juicy, sucky counter gank. Well, you know, not a typical counter gank in the way that we think about it, but at least the Aurelia gets an assist and the Fiora is of course dead. And the Lee Sin has to eat shame like he ate that tower shot, I don't know why. And yes, even Grandmaster and Challenger players can make these mistakes, these micro-decisional errors that allow enemy junglers and players to get leads. And that's, you know, what makes a good player. It's not that they don't make mistakes, it's that they capitalize on when the enemies do. The better you are, the more you can capitalize on a smaller mistake. Now there's an RNG crab in the top river, and you've seen that the Fiddlesticks went to smite his Krugs. He went to try and take the Scuttle Crab, but the Lee Sin shot up first directly out of base, took it away, and the Fiddlesticks has to go back to base a little bit sad once more. Regardless, out of base, most of you are thinking, well, if Lee Sin's top side and we start a blue side, we should head there directly. You are correct. But part about being a hyper carry jungler is, yes, we need a little bit of early impact and tracking relevant to the meta, which we had against the Lee Sin. We need to be able to play around our 6 very well. And then you need to remember this very important concept: reward yourselves with experience. We know Lee Sin's top side. He's gonna go dive the top lane. There's nothing we can do about it. What we can do though is, because we have our ultimate, is use it immediately while we know that no one else can cut us off. We also have a roaming fizz, which we can use to our advantage. Yes, that means we can dive bottom lane, get double kills. Yes, that means we can then translate that to an objective, because kill conversion ratio, this is the most important metric for junglers. When you get kills, how are we translating that to any sort of objective or map control lead? Look at that before you fall back to your blue side, please. Because this is how you maintain an experienced lead as a jungler, and this is how you maintain your high kill participation and high CS per minute. Now, once you've done the dragon and fallen back to your blue side, you might argue, well, why not go and counter jungle his red side? Well, you have to factor that, yes, Lee Sin showed top lane again, he repeat ganked, but you have to factor in that when the enemy bot, respawns, when you have a Rise mid lane with his ultimate, if you go too deep into the enemy jungle and you don't know exactly where the Lee Sin is, even if he's most likely on the Herald, again, it's a bit more risky, and we're trying to hyperscale, which means if we fall behind too far, it's going to be much more difficult. So as soon as the wailing cries of the Herald being destroyed on the top side of the map activate and you understand where the Lee Sin is, do what he did. Repeat and abuse. You just ganked a lane with your ultimate. Now we have a Fizz roaming down. Let's sync up, let's destroy them a little bit more, and you can push some plates yourself. Just because you're a farming jungler doesn't mean you have to full sequence all the time without thinking, because all of a sudden, if the Fizz is roaming down bottom side, Lee Sin just took Herald, you can't even move to the top side of your map because you'll most likely be invaded 2v1. So the bottom lane gank with the Fizz is a great play. It offsets the pressure that they're putting on Aurelia, which is huge for early game junglers. A lot of hyper carry junglers like Fiddlesticks players, especially in lower elos, just do not offset these aggressive plays, and the Lee Sin gets to count the top laner, take the Herald, rotate down to the bot, affect that lane, and the Fiddlesticks is farming, only playing around the ultimate, not using the kit otherwise. What this does is it forces the Lee Sin to elevate the game state very soon. By that I mean, he's activating the Herald, he's taking a tower, lane assignments are going to be reassigned, people are going to be goon squatting all over the map, picking off people who overpush. So what we can do is, when we see the Lee Sin head to the top side to take our Raptors, red Krugs, as Fiddlesticks, we might not be able to sort of take as much, but you can definitely take the red and look to take the Raptors. So when he begins to suck the red and the Raptors together and a Karma shows up randomly in a bush, she decides to, well, I don't know what she decides, she's level 5. What did you think was gonna happen? Fiddlesticks shows you the power of the electrocute on this champion when you have a lead. He hasn't even gotten his alternator yet. But overall, that's your early game, ladies and gentlemen. That's the first phase. Look to play that early game just like that. Look to play the second part of the early game just like that. We avoided the Lee Sin, made equal and opposite plays, repeat and abused, played around our ultimate, secured objectives, counter jungled, and now we can go back to base and move on to the map and now look to truly take over. Now, usually taking the mid lane tower for something like a Fiddlesticks is really rough against your aggressive junglers. How do you farm safely? How do you ward the entrances? How do you protect yourself against a roaming Rise, Lee Sin, Fiora, bottom lane, what have you? I've talked about this a few times, umbrella jungling. Simply keep to the outskirts of your map. Do not walk through unwatered bushes. Make sure you're leaving control wards, effigies, blue trinkets. If you think you might be invaded, simply walk around the back of your jungle. Do not walk through the middle of it. Do not face check as much as you can. And if you are Fiddlesticks or you are some kind of assassin-based jungler with electrocute, as soon as someone overcommits, win the fight. Use your ultimate, use your stats, use your itemization advantage. You are the one that's fed, you have control. And a lot of people are gonna say, well, I need an exact list of how to, win this situation. At some point, you have to PvP. At some point, you have to use your mechanics. You have to track their cooldowns, track your cooldowns, play around it, and make an outplay. There's no universe where you win a game of League of Legends without, actually piloting your champion. At some point, mechanics are gonna matter somewhat. Now in essence, we're looking to repeat this process. Sometimes you will die, just be careful not to give too many shutdowns away. Repeating the safe pathing, repeating your vision control, and simply letting them push into you will allow you to collapse in side lanes. You can do it in the bottom lane as well, as you can see. It also allows you with deep vision as they clear it to make picks that allows your team to stay within touching distance. No one is dying, you're warding very well, and you're not inting except for this one thing we're just gonna talk about. Yes, it's most likely you're gonna lose all your outer turrets before you take theirs, which means you have no vision control whatsoever. If you see them moving up through your jungle like the Fiddle does here, please just give away the red buff, don't go and face check and die. And you're probably thinking, well, the Fiddlesticks had such a good early game, how do I offset the Lee Sin? Sometimes you don't. It was a good early game by him, the enemy jungler played it very well also, and all you can really do is what we're talking about right now. And that takes a steady trigger finger, especially with that ultimate, and it takes a lot of discipline and patience. And then you're going to tell me, but wait a second, how do we actually break this stalemate? How do we finally turn the tides in our advantage? How do we get a Baron? How do we regain dragon control, map control? And honestly, it's not as exciting as you'd think. It's really just this patience forces them to make mistakes. You're forcing them to get a little bit desperate with their pathing, and you know what, when a Fiora walks into a warded bush because you've been so good with it, kill her, pull the trigger, do not hesitate. If the rest of the team tries to fight, now you have a 5v4, use it. Play it well with your mechanics and you should be able to ace them if you are a scaling comp or you're a hyper carry jungler. I've literally done this exact same thing with Maokai recently as well. Yes, Maokai in the jungle. I basically have to play like this a lot of the time. I'm lower on resources, but the one thing I have in my control is the ability to pull the trigger and engage from my team. So as soon as someone's out of position, I can flash WQ knockback, I've got my ult, I got my saplings for vision control, there's nothing they can do. And if you're a jungler like that, the difference is your patience, your trigger control, your knowledge about when to engage and force a fight, your knowledge about how to let them tilt into you in terms of forcing them to get a little bit antsy. That's really it when it comes to being a hyper carry jungler. The point is you need to make sure your early game and the beginning of the mid game is very, very strong and solid. It's not just, AFK and exist. You need to do these things we talked about in this video so that when these moments come where you have to be a little bit patient and wait to pull the trigger, you have the resources, the gold, and the stat to hyper carry those fights. And now essentially what you can do is the map opens up. You move into the jungle, you push the vision control deeper into the map, and every play you make needs to make sure you are pushing forward. Take their side towers. If someone's split pushing, kill them. If someone is split pushing again, you kill them again, and so on and so on. But the most important aspect is 100% pushing forward. Please remember that. Reward yourselves with camps in the early game, and now the same thing. You reward yourselves with camps as you go back to base or as you leave base, but you're always looking to push the map forward. Don't let your team push waves out while you go do Krugs. Be with your team, make sure if someone's resetting, now you can farm, join together, and look for those objectives and team fights. I described this in depth on a gameplay video and it's always a little bit similar, so I don't like to repeat myself too much, but I will link that in the description below for those of you who are looking for a bit more of a in-depth macro guide to this sort of scenario, but of course that's a little bit different to what we're talking about here. I know the mid games of these champions can seem kind of boring, can seem kind of dull, but honestly, this is what you pick and choose. This is why we pick and choose it. If your lanes win, if your early game is so good and the Lee Sin doesn't play like he did, you will have no issue counter jungling and winning the game by 22 minutes. But in the event you have a top laner that's dying this frequently and it's sort of a very even game until they blow it open in the mid game, you're gonna have to be patient and have the discipline. It isn't sexy, but it works. But guess what? Hyper carry jungling is sexy, and if you have an early game like this and play like this Fiddlesticks, you'll have no issue carrying most of your games, which means you can climb faster. And as we head to the end of the season, that's what we want. Thank you very much for watching. A little lighter on effects and a bit of a classic gameplay Monday for you, but hopefully the gameplay and presentation were enough for you to learn something and enjoy from this video. Please do like, share, and comment if you did. Consider subscribing for all the great jungle content and season 12 content coming very soon. I appreciate all the support during the tough times, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.